Hey there, hope you're having a wonderful day. So in the previous video, we went over inheritance, and essentially with inheritance, you can have a class inherit all the attributes and methods from another class. And so a derived class will inherit all the attributes and methods of a base class. Now in this video, we're going to expand upon the topic of inheritance and talk more about the properties of a derived class. So a derived class will inherit the type of the base class, and a derived class can override methods defined in the base class. So let's go over an example. Let's say I'm designing a video game, and in video games we have character classes. So I'm going to create a base class called game character. And just to keep things simple, I'm just going to provide one method for the game character, and that is attack. So we have our class over here, and now I'm going to create another class that will inherit from this base class. So let's call this warrior. And this warrior is going to inherit from game character. Now I can create an instance of warrior. So over here, I'm going to create a warrior, and I can call warrior.attack. And so we don't have an attack method defined inside this warrior class, but since this warrior class is inheriting from game character, it will inherit this attack method. So let's save and run the program, and you can see the warrior attacked with a punch. Now we can actually override the method and redefine it. So here I'm going to do void attack. And the warrior is going to slash with a sword. So now this method has been overridden, and now if we call warrior.attack, let's see what happens. So let's save and run the program, and you can see the warrior slashed with a sword. So instead of calling the base class attack method, it calls its own overridden method. Now a derived class will inherit the type of the base class. So what I can do is game character warrior2 and assign it to warrior. Now if I do warrior2.attack, what will happen? So let's save and run the program, and you can see the warrior slashed with a sword and warrior2 attacked with a punch. And the reason is we are converting this warrior from the warrior type to game character type to be assigned to this variable. So we are actually calling the copy constructor, and this warrior is being typecasted. So therefore warrior2 is going to be of the game character type and not the warrior type. And therefore any method that you add to the warrior class will not be accessible by this game character variable. For example, if I scroll up and I add a recover method, over here I can do warrior.recover, but here I will not be able to do warrior2.recover. And you can see if I hover over this, it says class game character has no member recover, okay? So a warrior is both a warrior type and a game character type, but a game character is not a warrior type. It is just game character. So let's remove this and this as well. Now, what about pointers and references? Well, pointers and references of a base class can also work with the derived class. So I can do game character reference of warrior. So let's set this to warrior. And if I do warrior ref.attack and I save and run the program, let's see what happens. You can see this reference to the warrior attacks with a punch instead of slashing with a sword. So this is actually a reference to a game character, and therefore when we reference this warrior object, we are not creating a copy nor are we typecasting the object. Instead, this reference is actually referencing this warrior object, and therefore when we call the attack method, it should actually call the attack method of the warrior class instead of the game character class. Now, what if we create a pointer instead? So I'm going to create a pointer to warrior and assign it to the address of warrior. And here I'm going to do warrior pointer attack. And let's also do the same for game character. So I can create a game character pointer and point to warrior as well. So game character pointer attack. What will happen if I save and run the program? So here you can see, as expected, the warrior pointer attacked by slashing with a sword, but the game character pointer attacked with a punch. So for both the reference and the pointer, we are not creating the object. We are just referencing and pointing to an existing warrior object. So we expect the attack methods to call the attack method of warrior. So the issue lies with the type. So here you can see this is a reference to game character and this is a pointer to game character. And by default, even though they are pointing to a warrior object, because a warrior is also a game character, C++ is just going to look in the game character class to call the appropriate method. Now we overridden the methods in the warrior class, but what we can actually do is declare this attack method as virtual. So a virtual function is a member function of a base class that can be redefined by the derived class. And essentially, we have this concept of dynamic dispatch. So the compiler is going to construct a virtual table or vtable for classes with virtual functions. And this creates a mapping of which method to use for the derived class. So by declaring this attack method as a virtual function, C++ is going to create a vtable and determine that this method will be overridden. And therefore, if we point to or reference a warrior object, it's going to call the attack method here. So now we expect the reference to call the attack method of the warrior and the pointer to call the attack method of the warrior. Now this game character variable is not going to change, and that is because we are typecasting or converting the warrior to a game character. Okay, so if I save and run the program, you can see the game character variable still attacked with a punch. However, the game character reference now attacks by slashing with the sword, and the pointer to a game character is also going to attack by slashing with the sword. And this is useful because we can have one base class pointer point to many addresses of derived classes. So I can create another derived class called mage or archer, and I can use this same exact pointer for these classes. Now, one more thing I want to note is we can also use the override keyword. So override can be added to reinforce overriding a virtual function in the derived class. So over here, because attack is a virtual function, I can declare this attack method as override. Now, it's not necessary to declare this method as override since C++ will know that this method is overriding a method. However, this is useful because it will guarantee that this method is overriding a virtual method. So for example, let's say I don't declare this attack method as virtual. Now you can see we get an error, and this will remind the programmer that we need to add virtual for this method. And if you add override to a method that does not have an equivalent in the base class, then you'll also get an error. Alright, so now if I scroll down and I save and run the program, you can see we get the same thing as before. Now, one more thing I want to note is we can actually create a game character class. However, we cannot use a derived class pointer to point to a base class. So I can't use the warrior pointer to point to the address of game character. Okay, and if I hover over this, you can see it says a value of type game character pointer cannot be assigned to an entity of type warrior pointer. So a base class pointer can point to derived classes, but a derived class pointer cannot point to a base class. And the same applies for references. Okay? So that's pretty much it for virtual functions and using pointers and references for base class and derived class. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you did, make sure you give this video a like. If you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments. And as always, if you want to stay up to date for more C++ tutorials like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.